Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. I hadn't lived in my house for long, just a handful of months, but the neighborhood always seemed quiet. Not upscale, not dangerous, just plain and ordinary. I only met a few neighbors during that time, and they were all friendly enough. Nothing ever felt off. That changed a few weeks ago. It was a late night, around 11. I was relaxing on the couch when the doorbell suddenly rang several times in a row. It startled me. Nobody had any reason to visit me that late. I got up and looked out the window. The porch was empty. I opened the door, stepped outside, and glanced around. Not a soul in sight. I went back in, thinking it was over. Moments later, there was a loud knock at the door. I rushed over, but again, no one was there. I figured it had to be kids pulling a prank. I stood near the door for a few minutes, watching and listening, but the silence returned. Thinking it was done, I sat back down. About 10 minutes passed, then it happened again. This time, the banging was louder, and they also knocked on the front window. I jumped up and ran over, but I was too late. I caught a glimpse of 3 figures running down my driveway. They weren't kids. They were grown men. I still wanted to believe it was just some stupid prank, but now it felt more aggressive. Knocking on the window crossed a line. I stayed alert, pacing around the house. Another chunk of time passed, maybe 20 minutes, and then came the worst of it. A hard slam rattled the front door. I started moving toward it when I heard glass shatter. My heart jumped. The small window in my front door had been smashed. Shards of glass littered the floor. Furious, I stormed outside. I saw the same 3 men running down the street. Without thinking, I chased after them. They were faster, but I didn't stop. I watched as they ran into a beat-up house at the very end of the street. It was in terrible shape, by far the worst on the block. I walked up and knocked hard on their door. No answer. I kept knocking. Someone eventually shouted from inside, telling me to leave. I yelled back, demanding answers about my broken window. It went silent. Then I heard movement from the side of the house. It was too dark to see clearly, but someone was approaching. Suddenly, something zipped past my head and crashed into a bush. Then another object hit the side of the house. They were throwing rocks at me. One came close to hitting my face. I turned and ran. As I sprinted off the property, I heard them laughing behind me. That made it worse. I wanted to fight back, but I knew it wasn't safe. Back home, I called the police. They arrived quickly. I showed them the damage and told them everything. They went to the house down the street and things escalated fast. It turned out that several adults were living there, most of them addicts. The place was filled with illegal items. When the police showed up, one man even tried to make a run for it. They went inside, found all the evidence, and arrested everyone. I pressed charges for the broken window and the rocks. Not long after that, the house was sold. New owners moved in and cleaned the place up. The whole street feels safer now. I was around 10 years old when this happened. I lived with my parents and older sister in a house where I had my own bedroom. One night, I woke up to the sound of thunder crashing outside. It was loud and constant. I glanced at the clock and saw it was nearly 2 in the morning. The storm was intense. Rain poured hard against the windows, and flashes of lightning lit up the walls. I tried going back to sleep, but the thunder kept jerking me awake. After a few minutes of tossing around, I got out of bed and walked to the window. The backyard was soaked, with water bouncing off every surface under the dim flashes of light. Since I couldn't sleep, I decided to play video games to pass the time. I turned on my PlayStation and sat down in my chair. Maybe if I kept myself busy, I'd get tired again. I played for about 10 minutes, just focused on the game. Then something pulled my attention toward the window behind me. I turned around without really thinking, and just as I did, I saw someone moving quickly away into the dark. My chest tightened. I hadn't seen the person clearly, just the shape of someone walking off fast. I stood up and moved toward the window, trying to look out, but it was too dark and rainy to make anything out. I stared for a while, hoping I'd imagined it. Eventually, I sat back down, nervous but trying to convince myself it was nothing. I didn't want to wake my parents. I didn't even know what to tell them. So I kept playing, trying not to think about it. I told myself not to look back again. Just focus on the screen, keep playing, and wait for morning. I lasted maybe another half hour. Then I got this terrible feeling in my chest. It was like something was behind me, watching. I slowly turned my head and looked toward the window again. He was standing there. This time, I saw him more clearly. A man, close to the glass, staring directly at me. As soon as I turned, he moved again, but not as fast as before. I saw him retreat, stepping away into the night. I bolted from my room. My feet hit the floor hard as I ran down the hall to my parents' bedroom. I woke them up in a panic, telling them someone had been watching me through the window. My dad grabbed a flashlight and went outside while my mom called the police. The backyard was empty. No signs of anyone. The officers showed up a little while later, looked around, but didn't find anything either. Eventually, I went back to bed, but I couldn't relax. I covered my window with a blanket and left it that way for weeks. I couldn't stand the thought of looking out and seeing that man again. He never came back. But even now, I still wonder who he was and why he was there. I'd never set foot in a canoe before. My family had a complicated history with water, so I always kept my distance. But when Adam invited me on a spring camping trip, I decided to give it a try. Adam was older, charming, poetic, and handsome. Most of us had a little crush on him, me included. There were 5 of us in total, and the plan was to camp by a remote lake during spring break. The area was untouched. The owner said no one had ever stayed there before. We had to clear out branches, rake away leaves, and build our own fire pit. We didn't mind. It was part of the fun. At one point, I uncovered a small snake under some damp leaves. It hissed and tried to strike, but Adam calmly picked it up and carried it away from camp. Watching him do that made me like him even more. After a meal of grilled hot dogs and burgers, Adam asked if I wanted to try canoeing. He had brought one just for the trip. I told him I'd never been in one before. He smiled and said, "Perfect. I'll show you how." I could hardly hide my excitement. Late in the afternoon, we pushed the canoe into the lake. The sky was turning gold, the water calm. It felt like a dream. I sat at the front, clumsily trying to paddle, while Adam took control from behind. We laughed as I splashed myself and struggled to steer. We talked about random things, and the way he smiled at me made it feel like maybe there was something more between us. Then his expression changed. He was staring at something over my shoulder. At first, I thought he saw a bird or maybe a deer in the woods, but the look on his face told me it was something worse. He leaned close and whispered, "Don't say anything. Stay low." He pulled me down until we were crouched beneath the lip of the canoe. My back pressed against his chest, but any butterflies I might have felt were swallowed by a chill crawling up my spine. We slowly peeked over the edge. There was another boat out on the water, maybe 100 feet away. At first, I thought the person was fishing. Then I realized the man wasn't holding a rod. He was aiming a rifle directly at us. I nearly screamed, but Adam covered my mouth. "Don't move," he said under his breath, over and over. The man in the other boat didn't say a word. He just stood there, pointing that weapon, slowly shifting it back and forth between us, like he was deciding which one of us to shoot. I panicked. I grabbed one of the oars and started paddling hard, hoping that if we moved enough, he'd have a harder time aiming. Adam joined in. We turned the canoe just as the first shot rang out. The bullet hit the water near us. My ears rang from the crack. Adam shouted something, but I barely heard him. Another shot splashed behind us. Then another. Each one landed closer than the last. We paddled harder than I thought possible. When we reached the shore, Adam jumped out and pulled me with him. We sprinted through the trees toward camp. Our friends were sitting by the fire, laughing and talking, completely unaware of what just happened. I wanted to yell, but my voice wouldn't come out. I stood there shaking, breath caught in my throat. Adam grabbed my hand and pulled me forward. He shouted for everyone to listen. At first, they thought we were joking. Then they looked out at the lake. The boat was still there. The man stood motionless, his back to us, the barrel of the rifle gleaming in the fading light. No one laughed after that. We doused the fire and crammed into a single tent. We sat in silence, hands gripping sleeping bags, ears straining for any sound. No one wanted to call the police right away. What if the man saw flashing lights and came after us before they arrived? What if he disappeared and left no proof? Eventually, we took the risk and called 911. 15 minutes later, we saw red and blue lights flashing through the trees. An officer called out. We opened the tent, shaking. They searched the area. No man. No boat. No shell casings. Nothing. The owner insisted no one else had permission to be there and apologized over and over. He wanted to press charges, but we couldn't even describe the man's face. We left that night. We never went back. Adam and I did grow closer after that. We dated for a while. It didn't last forever, but we stayed close. I'll always remember that night and how he kept me calm when I could barely breathe. I still don't know who that man was or why he chose us, and honestly, I don't want to know. I just pray he never found someone else to target. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.